Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 17, Turn, Turn, Turn. Now, the first part of this review is going to be a straightforward review of the episode itself, but the second part that I'm going to get to is going to incorporate some of the things that I learned from seeing Captain America the Winter Soldier before seeing this episode tonight. And now, of course, I'll let you guys know when I'm going to get to that because obviously it's going to contain spoilers for Captain America the Winter Soldier. But this episode was definitely really good. I loved the ending. It was a great twist. It's not at all what I was expecting, but an amazing episode that involved pretty much everyone trying to figure out who is good and who is bad because we learned that the clairvoyant in this episode is actually a part of Hydra, and Hydra has been working within S.H.I.E.L.D. all this time ever since they pretty much built up after Captain America so-called defeated the Red Skull and defeated Hydra back in his movie. So it was really cool to find that out in this episode that the clairvoyant wasn't just one person who was doing all these crazy things. It's Hydra, and their saying goes, if you cut off one head, two will grow. They've been within S.H.I.E.L.D., and we see in this episode that they're all over the place. They're in different facets of the teams, different they're in strike teams, they're leaders to other people, they trained other characters, one of which being Ward in the show. His former boss ends up being the clairvoyant, and it was just crazy to get that. Obviously we knew the main cast wasn't the clairvoyant. We knew May wasn't the clairvoyant because episodes ago we saw that she was actually connecting to Fury because Coulson figured out something is wrong. He knew what Tahiti was, and she knew he's hiding something from me, so I have to let Fury know that Coulson has figured out it's this weird alien serum DNA thing that saved his life. And of course, Coulson doesn't know that, so they have this internal struggle in the beginning of this episode, and Coulson's just on high alert. He has no idea who to really trust. She shoots May eventually. He's trying to figure out what was Fitz doing in the phone. Like I said, he shoots May, but in the end, excuse me, they do figure out who the clairvoyant is, and they do ultimately defeat him. And it was just really cool to see in this episode all the crazy things they had to figure out, where everyone's so separated because everything's at such a high level that communications are down. People aren't able to get the word across that Hydra's taking over. So it's really cool to see everyone who is separated try to figure out who is a part of Hydra. Coulson thought that the woman who commandeered the ship at the end of last week's episode, that she was a part of Hydra. She thought Coulson was a part of Hydra. And it was actually very cool to see how the name of the episode actually comes into play, where it's turn, turn, turn. And it's these three teams, the third team, of course, actually being Hydra, going against each other, where two of the teams are actually S.H.I.E.L.D. agents thinking the other is Hydra, and then Hydra being the third team, and they know everything that's going on. And it was just a really good episode that came to a fairly climactic ending, I would say, where they find out who the clairvoyant is as he's giving out his spiel basically, and Coulson says, I never told you a specific piece of information. And I thought that was really cool, and that's how he found out that he was the clairvoyant. And he tries to convince him, and then he knows he's busted, and he just says that typical bad guy pause where he's just like, and like, he's, even though he's been busted, he has no worries whatsoever. And we find out in this episode he really doesn't. But it was one of those sort of cliche moments that a bad guy has, but it's always really good when they have those moments, because if someone's been busted for hiding this big secret, they're the ultimate bad guy in the sense. And even when they're busted in a room full of their enemies and they still don't freak out and they just shake their head like, you got me, they have a huge plan. And I always like that because it means it's not over for that character. Something bigger and better is coming from that villain. And with the way this episode ended, we know for a fact that that's going to happen. So with the clairvoyant being captured, he's on the plane. The agent who we initially thought was a part of S.H.I.E.L.D., who I believe in the middle of the episode was revealed not to be a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it was a great way how they did it, where she went to Simmons and the guy that was with her and basically threatened them to join Hydra. and then they turn and say, if you kill us, then one of you is going to. And that's how she realized Simmons and the guy weren't a part of Hydra and they were actually loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. I thought that was a great way to play it because, of course, it seemed like she was the one who was the Hydra agent. But we find out that she's not, and in the end of the episode, it's her and Ward and the clairvoyant and two of her guards, and she wants Ward to kill the clairvoyant because he works for Hydra. He's done, of course, he's not the only person, but he's a part of Hydra, and he caused so much crazy crap. He's the clairvoyant, so he's obviously one of the high points of Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. And she wants him taken out because she feels that prison isn't good enough for this guy. And as soon as Ward stood up, he was conscious of it obviously, but he wasn't really in the moment. Once he stood up, I thought he's about to shoot her and the other two guys, and that's exactly what happens. And even though I knew that when he stood up, the entire episode leading to that moment, I didn't think for a single second that Ward was actually the clairvoyant or that he was working for Hydra. And when it's revealed that he isn't the clairvoyant, it's fairly obvious, like, well, of course he's not the clairvoyant. But I didn't think he was actually working for the clairvoyant because it made perfect sense that he snapped in that quick moment where he shoots the guy who's paralyzed because he cares about Sky. And it made perfect sense. He admits it to her, or maybe that was still just a part of his plan to go along and act like he cares about it, but I think he does actually have some feelings for her. Not that it will matter once they find out that he's working with Hydra, but it was really interesting to see where we find out he is loyal to his former commander and he is a part of Hydra. If for some reason he turns and he didn't actually kill those people, because he did load the gun up and cock it back, so maybe he put in some fake, red shells or red bullets, whatever. But for now, we have to assume that he is actually working with the clairvoyant and he is a part of Hydra. And we'll really find that out in next week's episode if the clairvoyant says, I'm glad you decided to stick with me, or if he says, I'm surprised you decided to change your mind and join me. That'll pretty much be the telling factor as to whether or not Ward is actually still a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. or if he's actually working for Hydra. But great episode. Love some of the tie-ins. We learned, I almost skipped over one of the biggest parts. We find out that Nick Fury is actually dead, which sort of falls in line with us finding out that Hydra is infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. But it's crazy to find out that Nick Fury is dead, and it was an amazing moment in the episode, and it even built up the episode even more, not just because a huge character is dead, which you kind of have to go see the movie to see how that just changes the entire thing. But we find out that he's dead, and we also find out that this episode does actually take place at the same time as the movie. Although I did see the movie beforehand, I thought it was far in the future, actually, maybe a couple more episodes, and they wouldn't actually get the information that the clairvoyant was a part of Hydra until possibly the season finale. But this episode happens at the exact same time as the movie, and it was really cool to get that. And they even show some stuff that happens in Captain America where they talk about what Captain America did, which I was watching it with my girlfriend and she was like, well, that's not a giveaway. I thought that was funny, but it's actually very minor stuff. I would assume that the Nick Fury thing did happen in the movie, but still, whether you saw it in the movie or not, it's still a huge part of the universe because it's the same universe. You just hear about it in a different way. I know in the actual movie you see what happens because it's even in the trailers where he gets attacked by the Winter Soldier. I would assume that that's the part, but it's the same universe. You just learn about it in a different way, just like you learn about Hydra in a different way. So it was really cool to see how everything tied together and how closely knit this episode and the two films were. Even if none of the characters from the film were actually in this episode, it tied together so perfectly compared to some of the other crossovers they've had, which with Thor they didn't really do much outside of have weapons and characters, and they made those episodes tie in simply with the movies. But this episode actually happened as the movie was happening. So I thought it was an amazing episode. I can't wait till next week, especially seeing the preview where the woman in the flower dress is alive now, and maybe she's a clone, and that's one of the things they picked up from Coulson. I don't know, and she was the test subject, but she's apparently alive, so I'm excited to see what's going on there. But Shield is infiltrated by Hydra and is basically destroyed now, and the team has to find out how they're gonna survive. And Coulson, of course, picks the team up in the end of this episode, and he wants them to keep going. But with Hydra now infiltrating so many facets of Shield that no one really knows how far-reaching it goes, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the series plays out, and for that matter, how the rest of the movies play out with Hydra being inside of Shield and eating it from within. But great episode. Comment below, let me know what you guys thought of it. Favorite parts, least favorite parts, and definitely tell me where do you guys think the show is going to go from now on. Now, this part will definitely be the spoiler section of it, and I'm going to be incorporating some of the things from Captain America the Winter Soldier and spoiling some stuff from Captain America the Winter Soldier. Of course, the biggest thing about it, Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D., that was the main point of this film. It was the main point of this episode. I loved how they tied together perfectly. And like I said, with the Nick Fury thing, of course, if you're watching this, like I said, spoilers. But if you've seen the movie, you know Nick Fury is actually alive. My girlfriend's in another room, so I don't want to say it too loud. But he isn't actually gone. But if I hadn't seen the movie, I probably would have guessed, because even when I saw the movie, I thought, you just don't do that with Nick Fury. But I did see a review where the guy reviewing the movie mentioned how in the film Cap is wearing his Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. outfit, which I didn't know was a thing because I'm not super into the comics, simply because of money issues, like a lot of people, I think. But when I heard that, I thought, if I'd known that, I probably would have thought he was actually dead, which I wish I did now, because that would have made it really big. But even if I knew that, I probably don't think I would have thought he was officially gone, just because it would be so early. But it would be an amazing way to start phase 2 if he was actually gone, and that's how the first movie phase 2 started. I think that would have been absolutely amazing. But it was such a great tie-in. This episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was such a great tie-in with the movie, and learning Hydra was within S.H.I.E.L.D. in the film was an amazing thing. And I thought that's what's leading up. That's what every episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., at least since the mid-season premiere, that's what everything's really been leading up to, is who is the clairvoyant, and everything's just been ramping up and ramping up. And then the movie comes out and you find out exactly who it is, and you even find out the character S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually a bad guy, which I thought was really interesting. And I'd love to see, even though he's been dealt with in the film, I'd love to see Coulson find out that S.H.I.E.L.D. was a part of it as well, just because S.H.I.E.L.D. was in one of the episodes, and they actually do have a bit of a connection. But great tie-ins, finding that out in 2 separate ways, it was really cool. Finding out that Fury was dead, but at the same time not dead, it was a great way to see it. And I wonder if you saw the film, or if you saw the episode first and you're watching this after you finally got to see the film, how did you guys feel when you watched the episode and you didn't actually know whether or not Fury was or was not alive? Did it change the way the episode went, or was it really the same for you? But definitely let me know how that may or may not have changed your feelings towards the episode, and how it might have heightened just the experience as a whole, because there were so many moments, mostly the Fury being dead and the fact that Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. Those 2 components are 2 of the biggest components of the Captain America movie. And it was, like I said, an amazing tie-in. I love how they did it, and I cannot wait to see what other future films do as far as tie-ins, if the series does continue, which I really hope it does. This was one of those episodes which, even without the film, it would have been an amazing episode to have something so huge appear in the show, especially if they saved it for the show and it didn't appear in the movie until after the show came out. It would be absolutely amazing, because they would have saved such a huge chunk of the Marvel Universe for their series, and that would just be an amazing way to keep the series around. And even though they put it within the film, it's only in that one film, and that's the only movie we're gonna have until I believe the Avengers actually comes out. I think that's the next Phase 2 film is the Avengers. But it was so great to have it in the show, and it's gonna expand throughout the show, and they're gonna bring in new people and show that they're bad guys, or show what other components of Hydra have been basically picked up over the decades since the Red Skull was defeated. And I can't wait to see how well they implement that within the movies, because this was their big moment, and I think they did it perfectly. The first film of Phase 2 ties in so well with the episode that I just can't wait to see what the next Marvel film does and how well it ties in with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And of course, it's two separate teams working on the movies and working on the show, but they of course tie in together because it's all in the same expansive universe. So they will be talking and saying, this is what's going to happen in the film. Okay, this is how we'll build up our episodes or rework them so that it leads up to the film, and actually we have an episode that weekend or the week after that ties in with the movie. So it was a great tie-in. Cannot wait to see how the show continues, because with the way the movie ended with Shield being what it is, they carry that on in the series. In the very next episode, Shield is destroyed and the team has to figure out what they're gonna do, and we also get to see what Hydra's doing. So it's gonna instantly expand what we got to see in the film, and it's just gonna instantly expand what happened within the series with the characters themselves. So I'm incredibly excited to see just how far Hydra, I guess, to see how far the Hydra storyline gets to go within the Marvel universe before it's officially defeated. And that may or may not happen in the show, or it could happen in the show or it could happen in the movies. Odds are it might actually end up happening in one of the movies, even though we won't get one for quite some time. And that's simply because Hydra is Hydra, and they'll probably save it. If anything, it'll die down and then it'll rise back up when Captain America 3 comes out, which who knows when that'll be, but Hydra's really tied to Captain America, so it probably won't happen in the show unless by some excessive miracle Chris Evans agrees to do a couple of episodes for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's how they do it. But either way, amazing tie-in. It made this episode so amazing, going from last week to the film to this week's episode. But even without the film itself, this was a really good episode, and I did enjoy it for the little bits and pieces we have. I do remember reading something that Nick Fury will actually be in the season finale, so I am really excited to see that too, because of course with the way the movie ended, Fury went into hiding, so he only trusts a couple of people, and I do believe Coulson's one of the people he'll trust, even though Coulson, now knowing this big secret, is angry. Coulson's still a trustworthy person, so I am excited to see what they have Nick Fury do. And Samuel L. Jackson may not be in the episode alive. He might only be in there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm still really excited to see just what happens right after the film and what this humongous character within this universe does after he loses his high position in S.H.I.E.L.D. He is nothing now. Not to say he's nothing, but he was S.H.I.E.L.D. Even though he wasn't at the very top, he was S.H.I.E.L.D. He's Nick Fury. That's who we know. He's Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. And now that S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone, what's he gonna do? So I'm excited to see him come into the season finale of this series. And like I said, cannot wait to see how they tie into the rest of the films. And hopefully it's just as amazing as this. I don't think it will be, honestly, because it's not the same thing. Learning the whole Hydra storyline, it's much easier to build up to this person not being a superhero or superhuman, but actually being someone within S.H.I.E.L.D. I feel like that's much easier than let's somehow lead up to Age of Ultron or somehow lead up to Thor 3. It's a bit different, but hopefully they can find a way to make it work and have these great tie-ins, because as I've said, I don't know how many times already, this was the best tie-in they've had so far. And most of the other films, or all of the other tie-ins really, have been based on Thor. So this was the first one without it. I mean, they had Nick Fury in the second episode, so that just ties to S.H.I.E.L.D. itself, but none of the actual films. But they tied to Thor twice. They tied to Thor with the weapon, which wasn't a huge tie-in, and Thor was there, and they found a weapon. That wasn't a big deal at all. That was really nothing. But they had their other tie-in where Civ actually came in, and that was absolutely amazing. And even though I love that so much, and it was just a cool episode because she was an Asgardian and she fought another Asgardian, and they were able to do all the crazy special effects and just beat up all the human characters. I still enjoyed this one more because it was more of an overarching tie-in. It wasn't just this is one great episode, or these are two great episodes where these characters come into play and they're from the Thor movie. This is going to affect the Marvel Universe throughout the rest of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the rest of these films permanently until they decide we have no more money, we have to sell this to another company, and they restart it or something. But great tie-in, great episode. Of course, Captain America 2 was absolutely amazing. But now that I've gone through all my talking and crap, what did you guys think of this tie-in? Was it the best tie-in that you could think of? Do you guys think it was done well? Do you guys wish it was done differently? Do you guys think some of the dialogue in the episode, like saying Nick Fury died or mentioning that Cap did end up defeating the three things, which admittedly isn't that much of a spoiler because it's any movie the superhero's gonna win. The Nick Fury thing I understand, but at the same time it gives you an amazing hint, and then you go see the movie and it's like, oh, he's not actually dead. But do you guys think it was a good tie-in, or do you guys wish it was done completely differently? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.